What's up, Reed?
That's our when we're being asked to do that now. Coming up, spoiler alert in the show for AJ. He goes, I got to get a year from you guys. So I guess that's our thing now.
It's kind of become our call. I dig it. Sorry, Bronx. We took your little saying, and now it's kind of becoming a thing among the XFL-CFL people. But we're spreading the love. We know where it came from. Of course, much love to the BX.
I tweeted at Rod Peterson, like I said I would before the show today, and I said, Rod, if you're gonna break, we're recording in an hour. If you're gonna drop any earth-shattering news, let us know now. And he didn't get back to me, so I assume we're good to go. Also, Dan Barnes, who's also going to be on the show, said that this is, I guess, going to be the big news. He goes, nothing to talk about after this week for a couple weeks. So hopefully we have a great show that is evergreen through tomorrow. Fingers crossed for everybody listening. So
yeah, I really do not need you sending me 40 text messages on my way to do the Havana Lounge. I just nothing personal. I just you're like, what the F? And you're using, words that we don't normally use here. I mean, you're freaking out. You're like, because the show basically just got blown up last minute. So it'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be great.
I keep checking Twitter to make sure nothing is late breaking because I don't want to have the situation that we had the other night.
No.
So with that being said, speaking of spreading throughout Canada, going back to that your thing, spreading throughout Canada, Farhan's calling us famous in Canada. Remember that last week?
Yeah, I added a shirt to the templates. I haven't added it to the shop yet, but you could potentially go to xflshow.com/merch and get hey, you guys are famous in Canada. No, it's cool. It's good. We have a great show today. I appreciate AJ from the Red Blacks, and then Dan Barnes coming on to talk. I keep skirting around saying AJ's last name. Do you notice that?
We'll get to the bottom of that.
Jakubec. But no, we have AJ Jakubec with the Red Blacks coming on, and then we have Dan Barnes. Lots of fun CFL, XFL stuff, continuing to educate ourselves and the listeners. I think people are appreciating that. I reposted our big Arash duel on YouTube. I had a lot of comments of, hey, it's almost better that you guys have, conflicting views. It adds to the legitimacy of your podcast. So I like adding the legitimacy to the podcast.
What I'm looking to add is a plate of humble pie to Arash's dinner table.
Yes. I already, when they announced the XFL-CFL merger, and it's called the XFL-CFL or whatever it's called, I already have the thumbnail in my mind for the video of us serving humble pie to Arash on the podcast. A couple other quick notes. Jenna, congratulations. Jenna, winner of the Chad Ochocinco giveaway ball. We announced that last week on the show. Got the ball either this morning or last night, tweeted the photos. I retweeted it. Congratulations. I have sent out all the hats and everything. So that all should be en route. And the jersey, if you guys don't have that here in the next week, I think Paul paid like premium for the shipping. I did not. So you guys will get them when FedEx gets them over there.
I'm not going to say where Jenna lives, but it's relatively close.
That's true. Okay. Yeah. Cali. So yeah. So anyway, so that's good. Also, xflshow.com/reviews. We had 2 reviews come in this week. Listener Max finally got off his butt and left us a review. And then our friend Braden of CFL Reddit left us a review. So we are climbing up the charts in iTunes Canada.
That's good. I mean, we were number 1 in iTunes America. I don't know if we're still holding that out spot. Hopefully we are. I haven't checked in a bit.
We bounce
up and down, but it's fine. We'll lock down the number 1 spot, and we won't let it go here soon. So this is the podcast that doesn't lead with clickbait, right? That's what you want to say? Is that our new motto here?
I just wanted to point this out. I don't like to talk about the competition too much or any other XFL podcast. I did think it was very interesting that what we mocked and called clickbait on our show last week about the intergalactic super mega league game between the XFL and CFL was the lead of another XFL podcast. So again, I am trying to do the best job we can by making sure we know what is correct and what is not. And that's not to make fun of anybody or not, but yeah, I take it very much seriously to get, and like having AJ and Dan on today, who are people in the trenches covering this stuff every day and not speculating on clickbait. So I am just happy that we did that.
Good.
The other thing, I have my notes here. I have my Roughnecks hat.
Yeah.
It came like literally the second after the show aired last week. In my panic of my Rod Peterson breaking news, I was like, and my Roughnecks hat came. So it was, we recorded an hour or two early last week, but that's okay. I had people send in, if I get motivated on the video edits today, Josh Davis, who won't see this, but then Vince and Philip Ramirez all sent in their merch from their Roughnecks. I did a call, so I might put some photos up here if you're watching the YouTube video. And I'll probably put Jenna's photos from getting the ball too. So a little plug if you're listening on audio to watch the YouTube version.
Yeah. So when you get your merch, send us pictures of you getting your merch, and we'll throw them on the YouTube. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? What's this? Mark turning into the Mad King? I don't know. What is this?
So the episode today, the episode title, and we'll get into this more later. The XFL is not the enemy, and I'm going to maintain that. I have my note here. The XFL-CFL to me equals Lost. I tweeted this at the end of season 1, if anyone's seen Lost, and Jack...
Spoiler alert.
No,
I mean, it's been out for 20 years, but spoiler alert.
Season 1, very climactic episode, and Matthew Fox, Jack Shepard on the show, screams at everybody. He goes, "We need to live together or we're going to die alone." Right? Because they're all living on the island and they're all doing this stuff. And that's how I feel about this. Mark, this week on his podcast, XFL News Hub Week in Review, got a barrage of like anti-XFL, anti all this stuff, going crazy. And Mark like kind of devolved in the last like half hour of the show. And he was like, you know what? Like, we're number one. We don't need your views. Like, we're going to stay number one. And I was like, Mark is like, burn them all. Like, Mark really turned into
like the gift that I have that I keep posting with the guy looking at the fire behind him. That's kind of what's happening.
Yeah. Mark's like, we'll play 1 down. We'll play 4 down. So I go, Mark, you have at it. So, and we'll get into this with XFL. So we're not the enemy. And there was a very heated discussion. We're going to get into all of our stuff. I hate all this preface, but I had tweeted the night before the CFL delay, where they had said, hey, we're going to play the Grey Cup in December. And I go, okay, so honest question, is it worse to play the Grey Cup in December than it is to start in February? Just asking weather-wise what's going on. The heat that question got, and it was like, I finally had to turn off. Like, I couldn't even, and I was just asking the question. I had no idea. I was like, hey, people that live up there. And the sentiment I got, and BB Can Ryan follows us. He was on Big Brother 5 or 6. He goes, I just hate this false narrative that the XFL wants to, save the CFL and like F you guys and all this. I go, dude, as upset as you are and other people about people not taking the CFL seriously, saying the players aren't good for the NFL, saying 3 downs are dumb, saying all that stuff, that is the same way the XFL people feel. Like, we are all the same. Like, we all want to be together here. So like, we are not the enemy. Like, we want to build the stuff. We want to build our stuff. Like, we are not. Go hate on the people that are crapping on, that are saying that it's NFL or nothing. Hate on that Chase Crowder on Pat McAfee show. Like, don't hate on us. We're not. We are. I told him, I have bent over backwards. We have the last 6 or 7 weeks to get people on here to educate. So don't
look. The whole thing, the whole rivalry, I guess, if we're going to say that, between the CFL and XFL is one-sided.
Yeah.
It really is one-sided. The XFL people have started to get to know your product, get to appreciate your product, think there's a lot of things about your product that need to come into the XFL to make it good too. And we're not attached to letters. We're not attached to a name. You can call it the CFL. We don't give a crap.
No.
Just like realize that we want the CFL to succeed at the end of the day. And you guys are pushing Reed to become like me on Twitter. I've noticed it lately. The Reed's getting a little bit spicy with you people, you Canadians, about this stuff. And it's like, dude, we're not trying to fight you. No. We're not. I know you don't maybe not trust Americans. We're arrogant and cocky, but there are some of us that care about the product and care about the heritage of your league. I know you say it's 100 years, it's actually like 60, but there's a lot of us that care about the lineage and history and product that you have and want to see it succeed long past 3020. Not saying the world's going to be around by then, but you get my point. You get my point. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was proud of my one tweet this week because, again, the laziness talking about the American expansion of the CFL. And, it didn't work in the 90s. It's not going to work. I go, think of all the things that didn't exist in the 90s. iPhones, Netflix, high-speed internet, selfies, Wikipedia, streaming music, Google, texting. And please tell me the 90s expansion didn't work. Think about that. Think about how different our lives are from the 90s from now. And tell me that, just because it didn't work 30 years ago, it's not going to work.
That's true.
Did you have a fact check on one of my bullet points?
Well, I do know that when I was in high school back in 1996, we did have some high-speed internet access at the schools. We didn't have it at our homes, so there's might be a clarification there. And the first text message was actually sent on December 3rd, 1992. Yeah. So we did have text messaging in the 90s.
So text messaging was just the Bengals have not won the playoff game since texting existed, but
you've seen the whole thing.
Anyway.
And if I'm going to borrow from something right there, pointing out that the text message was sent in 1992, which means we had texting for the majority of the 90s. I just Matlocked you.
I don't know what that means.
Because you don't listen to the Wheelhouse.
I do listen to your other podcasts. I still don't know what that means. So
that means I just won an argument.
Oh, you won an argument. Okay. Anyway, so done with the preface. On to the news. I'm hooked. I got my zero sugars. It's 10:45 in the morning. Here we go. So we're cracking here.
By the way, I told you that I was drinking. I finished the case that I got.
Wow.
I noticed the case you got has sugar in it, so I cannot drink that case because diabetes.
Well, they didn't have zero sugar when I ordered it. It didn't exist.
I'm not judging. I'm just saying that it's sitting it's sitting up above my fridge right now, and I'm going to just take it to work and just say, here's.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, bring it into the newsroom.
So the big news that happened this week, the CFL is announcing a target date in big quotes, August 5th, 14-game season, Grey Cup on December 12th. Target date.
Yeah, I got it penciled on my calendar. I'll be there. If the Grey Cup happens this year, I will be there. No questions asked.
We will both be there.
So, I'm just telling you. So it's got to happen. I'll come December 12th or I'll come whatever. Like I said, I asked about that. I asked about the logistics of, okay, is it better to do the Grey, because the whole thing I've heard for 2 months, can't play in February. It's too cold in Canada. We can't play in February. It's too cold. I go, okay. So then when they announced in December, I go, is that better? Is that worse? Oh, it's way better. It's way better. I got a lot of arguments about how a dry cold is better than the wet February cold. People in Canada are very in on the weather. I heard a lot of arguments about for crops, it's better for the farmers that are watching me. It was crazy. My Twitter that when I asked that went crazy. The farmers, it is better for them if the thing is, it's crazy.
This is not really it's more, this is all based on health. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah. Just my big concerns about this, and I've copied a lot of stuff on here, but we don't have to get into all that. I just, and I did go back and forth with Dave Campbell about this, friend of the show. He feels very positive that the CFL is really being open and honest about this, right? Because we don't cover the CFL. We're new at this. He goes, no, this is great. They really whatever. I go, yeah, but it didn't seem like Ambrosi said a lot. I saw a lot of retweets about backup plans, and we have backup. But none. I said, you know what's better than backup plans? Telling us what those are. And so far, the only things we've seen is that they're going to cut the schedule or have the teams in the East play road games at home in the West. What do you think about those as the only options for backups right now if things go awry?
They need a bubble. And if that bubble
they said no bubble, though. I
know they said no bubble, but they need to have some kind of games. And, we get into it later on about, they need to have some fans. They need to have some games. They need to have some fans. And if you have a bubble, then you don't really have fans. So I think that the backup plans are limited. And I think the reason why, we say bubble, but then we go, well, we need fans too to pay the bills. The backup plans are very limited. And I think that should show people how fragile and vulnerable the league is. If they need fans, everyone we're talking to says they need fans. So they're ruling out a bubble. So now they're down to 2 backup plans, it appears. I mean, am I reading this wrong?
No, I mean, that's just what I asked. And like I said, I talked with Dave and he goes, well, I feel like people are holding, not just us, but people are holding the CFL to a higher standard. And I go, to be fair, I think we at XFL Mark hold everybody to a high standard. I mean, talk to me about fan control football and then we can talk about holding people too. But I go, that's your big plan is, well, if it's still bad in the East, we'll just travel to the West. I'm like, well, how does that work with crossing the provinces and border? Like, does Canada want that? Like, well, it's really diseased in the East, so we're just going to ship all the players to the West and play. Like, that'll be fine. Like, is that okay? I mean, like, if we had, I mean, these are just questions I'm asking, but like, if that was in the US and you're like, yeah, the East Coast is just like riddled with COVID, so we'll just have the teams fly to the West. Like, would the US be like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like, just fly them into LA. Like, we'll just play in LA. If we can't play over there, like, isn't there some modicum of like rules for the whole country?
I wouldn't even begin to speculate. And you're making an assumption how many weeks out that one, the East is going to be terrible.
Well, that's what they're saying. That's what Randy says.
And two, what if the East drops dramatically and the West pops up? Now all of a sudden you're going to move the teams from the West to the East. Like, there's so many projections you're making, and the virus is making its own projections. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. And I know a lot of our friends, I'm seeing like Rod got his Fauci ouchie, as we call it here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
He got shot up. Jim Mullen from what you got yours? Yeah, I got my second dose last week. It knocked my ass down for a few days. The Moderna's no joke, kids. So I'm seeing a lot of our friends in Canada get their shot on. So we're hoping that mitigates the spread, slows it down, and everything can go off without a hitch.
Yeah, I just the other concern, and I was talking to Dave Naylor and Farhan about this on Twitter, is those players aren't going to be made whole for those lost games, right? And that is another sad thing. So, they're already paid like crap. You go from 18 games now to 14 games. It's just not good. It's not good, and it is crazy how it's showing how fragile. For whatever you want to say about the different leagues and stuff, it's a very fragile situation. Even the online betting, we talked with Rod about this a month ago. He said, people think online betting is going to solve everything. Yeah, but you got to have games, and you got to have games. You got to have fans, and you have fans. You got to have it's all reliant. It's all this house of cards, and it is crazy. But yeah, Naylor said, he goes, I would just presume that those are lost paychecks, and I said, well, that really stinks. So,
yikes.
The other quick note, Rough Riders president Craig Reynolds, he said, the reality, this is just a quote I pulled. He released a statement yesterday to the fans. He goes, the reality is it will take several years for us to get back into the black and out of the hole this pandemic has left us. Playing football this season is the most important and most exciting thing we can do, but it will not solve our financial issues.
So I'm going to make an assumption that he is on board with the merger or some sort of interleague stuff. Yes? No?
It's interesting. I mean, we talk a little bit about this with Dan, and to plug his article, I had a note because he did some research with talking with the players, the CFL-PA up there about the pay cuts and stuff too. He thinks that, the CFL, it will continue for a million years. And I don't disagree, but and like we said, they could come in with the XFL and still go back and do their own thing. But it is, this season is not a cure all. I mean, we're just trying to get through this season and figure out whatever, 2022, I guess, looks like.
I think you'll hear Dan coming up later on. Like I said, I don't he's very knowledgeable about the subject. I think that there's a lot of optimism on his end that this is going to happen regardless of merger or any kind of, support from the American side of things. I think maybe he has some info on the government stepping up finally and helping out, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Speaking of funding, per Dan, Randy Ambrosi said the league has not asked XFL or Redbird to fund their 2021 season, and they've never had that discussion with the XFL, and he believes they could create a made in Canada solution.
That's a quote, Randy. Made in Canada.
Okay, Randy, then do it.
Well, and to me, as someone that tries to walk the line, that hurts when that comes out, and then I get a lot of we can do it in Canada, F you guys. And I get that, and I get the American thing, I get all that, but to me, that stokes that national pride, which I absolutely get and respect 100%. But this is bigger than that at this point, right? If we're looking at the leagues, or I would like to think so. I mean, I don't care. We're going to go to the Grey Cup. I don't care what side of the border anything's on. But when he says that, made in America or made in Canada, we're going to have that solution, I get a lot of feedback about that. See, we don't need you guys. F you. And I'm well, no, I just think he means they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I think, they're reading too much into it, and I don't know if I completely agree that they haven't had some talks with Redbird or XFL about potentially coming up with some money. It just doesn't seem like they would talk about everything else and not talk about a 21 season being funded. I know people are saying Randy Ambrosi is being completely transparent, but it seems odd they would have talks about everything else, because again, why does the CFL pick up the phone and call the XFL if they're not in serious financial trouble and money's never discussed? I don't know if I buy it. Sorry, I don't know if I buy it.
Well, and the idea is that a bailout, I guess, hasn't been discussed. I got my hot take here. I left this on Facebook yesterday. If anyone wants to read hot take, and don't flame the podcast, please. But this is my hot take right now. The article came out. Ambrosi said the XFL-CFL discussions have never involved rules so far. It's always just been business, right? They've been talking business. And so people were sharing that. I go, why Reed thinks they haven't discussed rules? And I'm not saying I want this, because they're rolling over. It's XFL. That's my hot take. Is they're we don't need to talk about rules because we're not taking those rules. And Rod said last week, we talked, the one change was the post in the front versus the back, but 4 downs, all these things. That's my hot take. It's they don't need to talk about the rules because they're not taking any of that and they're just plowing through. That's just my hot take.
So your hot take, you're stepping away. Your hot take is that they're taking all of the XFL rules.
That's my hot take, and I don't have anything in the world to justify that at all. But I'm saying if they've talked for 2 months or since October, and they're our focus just really hasn't been about the rules; it's been about business. It's because the XFL does not care about the CFL rules, and I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying that is my hot take.
I want the multiple motion. I'm cool with the 3 downs. I'm cool with the 4 downs. Whatever, doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I think the yardage on the field probably needs to change. I think it was Braden that said, if that happens and they go uniform 100 yards, then all of a sudden it's not a truncated field anymore. There's, you see some of those fields that have the end zone that isn't quite square. It's got 2 corners cut off. You take the field down to 100 yards, and then all of a sudden the corners aren't cut off anymore. And the only reason, I don't know if you knew this, the only reason why American football fields are 100 yards and then the 10-yard end zone is because of multi-use stadiums.
Yeah, baseball.
Because Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, the last multi-use facility, is no longer a multi-use facility with the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. But that's why our fields are 100 yards, and then the extra 10 yards on the end zones is because of that. So I think that's probably something that unfortunately, you're going to lose a 55-yard line there, CFL fans, and probably you're going to lose 3 downs. But the Rouges are fine. I think the Rouges are cool. I think it's a cool aspect. I think the missed field goals. I think there's so many things of the CFL game that could be implemented. And we're talking about rules here, but it seems to be some things that people are dying on. We don't want 4 downs. Well, your kids are playing Madden, and on Madden they get 4 downs.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just my hot take. I saw that. Just one quick note, and then we'll get into this XFL stuff because I'm sure people, like we know what's going on with the CFL delay. I did think it was interesting. Randy Ambrosi did an article with cfl.ca, and they were asking about getting a revised schedule and everything. I do think it's weird, they don't have that yet. And I'm like, so what have you guys been doing for? I mean, I get it, and I get okay, we're trying to figure out the date and all that, but can't you plug that into it? I mean, the NFL has just a guy that just goes in and does the NFL schedule. There's just one guy that does that, and he knows all the whatever. Good Morning Football talks about it a lot. He just spends a week and does it. In all this time, we haven't heard anything from you guys in months, and you're like, yeah, we're getting the schedule figured out here in a couple weeks. We know we're going August 5th. It just,
I know. But if one guy can take a week and do a schedule with 32 teams, there's no reason why they can't have one guy do a 9-team, 14-game schedule in a week either.
This seems weird. Again, I'm not trying to hold anybody to a higher standard than anybody else. I'll hold anybody to a high standard. I do think it's weird that we don't have a schedule that they couldn't just pencil one in.
And it's pretty easy to figure out what the NFL schedule is going to be if you follow it by the end of the season in the standings. Okay, Seattle finished second in the NFC West, so they're going to play every second place team in the NFC, including every team in one division of the NFC, whether it be East or North, whatever the case may be. You could figure out pretty much how the schedule is going to go when the season ends the previous season. You can figure out what teams are going to play what teams the next year. So
the CFL didn't plan 2020. Don't tell anybody.
I know what you're saying. I'm just saying that figuring out a schedule is not the worst thing. It's not the worst.
Yeah. So Chris O'Leary on the CFL thing, I just had a couple pull-out quotes here. He talked with Ambrosi and the XFL thing came up. This was a phenomenal quote to me, and it really resonated. I want to get your thoughts. This is a direct quote from Ambrosi. He goes, "What has become increasingly obvious to me is that the business of our league has never been as good as the players who play our game and the game itself. What we're looking at and what we've been working on is improving our business model." I mean, just when you have the commissioner of the league saying yeah, we need to do better. Our players deserve better. I don't think Goodell's coming out and saying that. I don't think Goodell's coming out doing his Zoom draft from his remember when he had that fancy living room for the draft, virtual draft last year. I don't think Goodell's coming out being yeah, our business model really needs to step up to our players. I mean, I'm not saying that's not true, but it just really struck me that he said that.
I mean, it's all paradoxical in a way, chicken and the egg kind of situation. You need a better business model. You need a better TV deal. You need to pay your players better. You need. And I mean, he's stating the obvious here. He really is stating the obvious here. We need to improve everything about our league. So.
The other one I shared, and this is should feel good for CFL, XFL fans. Every time you are on a call with them, that's him talking about XFL people, you are struck by how genuine, authentic, and sincere they are in trying to determine if there's an opportunity to do better together in some form. That's been the spirit of our discussion so far. Genuine, authentic, and sincere. I think those are good words you want to hear.
Yeah, you want to hear them, but I don't know if anybody up there is believing them. They just think that we're going to come over and take over their league. Some of them do.
The other quote, and there we go. Frank Gunn with the Canadian Press. Ambrosi did a couple quick interviews yesterday talking about this. He goes, and this is good if you're, I know Jake Henry, friend of the show, he's getting a little well, I don't know what's going on with these XFL talks if they're talking about the CFL season. Ambrosi goes, I think there is without a doubt a sense of urgency to try and advance our discussions. Urgency.
What would cause urgency, Reed?
Well, yeah. So,
what would cause urgency, Reed?
A business.
It's a 5-letter word. It's a 5-letter word. Starts with an M, ends in Y.
A business model not being good enough for the players. That would have a sense of urgency.
But they're still also looking for a made in Canada solution. Do you see how this is
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm looking at these different quotes and I'm thinking you're kind of contradicting yourself. You're saying you're not talking to XFL people about money, but then you're saying there's a sense of urgency. If there's no urgency, then if there's urgency, then you need money. Yeah. If there's no urgency, I don't feel you need money. I think those two go hand in hand. I don't think the urgency comes down to anything but money.
Yeah. And again, I had a lot on here I deleted. I dove through a lot of stuff yesterday trying to find quotes and stuff. I appreciate, if you want to subscribe, appreciate, the work being put into this. Dunk with 3 down. He said the CFL-PA advises players not to make any decisions related to their current employment, even after this delay. And I would echo that. I feel terrible for friend of the show, Matt Mangle, who even yesterday he was tweeting. He goes, "Give me a flamethrower. I'll be there at the championship game, like in the snow. I just want to kick and play." And I'm like, Matt, I get you so much, and I could not feel worse for these players.
Yep, completely agree. Alouettes co-owner Gary Stern intrigued by potential with XFL. It would have to be something great for CFL to trade its uniqueness.
But even that, do you get how hypocritical that is?
Yeah, because we know that you are one of the owners. That's you're tied to MLSE. So we feel like that's lip service. Yeah. Like we already know the behind the scenes story about how you're tying your boat to MLSE. Wherever Toronto goes, Montreal follows. So I'm sorry, but I don't think he cares about the uniqueness of the CFL. I think he cares about, following Toronto, and Toronto's following the money.
Yeah, and I'll jump down here. Mark Perry had just posted an article today. It'll be on News Hub, breaking out some really interesting quotes about this on Rod's show last week. That he had the guys on from the Outsiders podcast, and they kind of echo that too. That they're hearing a lot of it's Montreal and Toronto that are wanting out, and that it's kind of an all or nothing boat at this point. That it's like the CFL isn't going to have a TV deal with TSN if they don't have 9 teams. So if those 2 teams are kind of like, hey, we're wanting to go with the XFL or we're wanting to go otherwise, that's where this kind of confusion, not all the teams are aligned, if that makes sense, of what everyone wants.
I think that we've discussed that. There's 2 teams there. I think it's Winnipeg and
Montreal, and it's Montreal and Toronto.
I know, but there's 9 teams. 2 teams are actively going toward an XFL merger. That's Toronto and Montreal. Yeah. But there's 2 teams on the other spectrum that they're like, no, we can make it happen ourselves. Yes. I think is it Hamilton and Winnipeg or something like that. I think those are the 2 teams. The owners are like, no, we don't need this. And we're kind of telling you now that if Toronto and Montreal go into XFL, all of you guys are going to the XFL, and we're going to call it CFL, call it the XFL. I don't know what we're going to call it. Yeah. But if Toronto and Montreal want to join the XFL, you are all coming with. Yeah. And whether you like it or not. And then all of a sudden, when you see the financial revenue increase for everybody, maybe it's not a bad idea.
A couple just last things here to get off of this. We'll get to our interviews. Arash, of course, friend of the show. He was on 3 Down Nation. Now, of course, saying he wonders if RedBird Capital is going to write a check, CHEQUE. I go, we need to spell check that. If it's going to be American money, it's a CHECK. Okay, it's a check. All right, I don't want to hear this like, it is interesting though, Mr. Arash, Dan says, and he'll be coming up in the interview. We asked him about that, about XFL and the RedBird money and what he thinks is going on. I won't spoil that, but it is 3 Down kills me how thin skinned they are sometimes, that I feel like we will take it on the chin when it comes to XFL all the time. It is interesting to me of all the illustrious interviews we've had recently, Farhan, Jim Mullen, Connor, all these wonderful interviews. The only one that 3 Down took the time to write up was the Arash talking crap about the XFL one. And I just thought that was odd.
Well, I mean, if you're talking crap about the XFL, why do you want to take a check from RedBird? You're going to talk crap about him. Are you cutting off your nose to spite your face, Arash? Is that what's hot in the streets? You 3 Down Nation guys, I love your content, but y'all got to step out of that homer box.
Dude.
We have stepped out of the homer box. Yeah. We have conceded multiple things about the XFL, the fact that they used the initials the second time around. Dumb idea. We're objective. You're not quite so objective. So love you guys, but let's try to distance our emotions from your beloved sport, and let's work towards something that works.
Rick Zamperin, Global News, he thinks that postponing the season, which they did, is going to further fuel the CFL-XFL merger talks. I'm curious about that. I'm curious, I asked Dan, I asked AJ, like, how do we cover the season? If it is like winter is coming, it feels like the Night King is on my shoulder.
Yep. Russ Jackson, legendary CFL quarterback. I think if there was an amalgamation, oh, wow, tremendous word for a Latino to pronounce, of the American and Canadian side, it would lead towards playing the American game. I have no interest in that. I have 4 season tickets here in Hamilton. I'm not sure I would keep those season seats if we turn into an American-type football game. I want the CFL to play 3-down football. The Canadian game is better. I can already see the American game at the highest level by watching the National Football League if I want to. Cutting off our nose of spider face. Why are we dying on this hill of 3-down football?
Well, and Russ Jackson is Rod speaks legendary CFL quarterback.
I get it.
Then it's not like they don't care about you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, they don't care about anybody. They don't care what I have to think. They don't care what Rod Peterson has to think. They don't care what Farhan. I mean, if they're going to do this, like, they don't, and that is terrible to say, but yeah, they don't, it is money MO-NY.
Yeah. And I don't know why is the 3-down thing the hill? Like, there's so many better things about your football that you could die on. Like, we've talked to people who've said that youth leagues are playing 4 downs. Like, why is the 3-down thing such a sticking point?
The funniest thing, Rod and Moose, whatever his co-hosts, were talking about the kids growing up. And they go, shoot, if anything, having 4 downs is just more opportunities for the kids to play the game, right? Like, oh, we get to play another down before we get to go sit on defense. Like, it is interesting. A couple of days, we talked about the global draft last week. That went out. That's not really we're never going to give you the expertise on like the guy from Mexico that got recruited or whatever. But I did hear a lot of players turn down contracts because it wasn't worth it for them to relocate to Canada for the money. And Rob Vanstone on the Regina Leader Post, he says, facing the world of problems, the CFL nonetheless conducted its 2nd annual global draft, thereby wasting everybody's time.
What a fire take.
Well, I like that. I might have to get Rob on the podcast. I like that. I like takes like that.
I dig it. And then our friend Arash Madani, the eventual recipient of some humble pie here. He said on Friday, the return to play committee has a conference call scheduled. There's going to be a conversation there. There's still hope and intention of all systems go of trying to make this a reality somehow. So, of course, that'll happen after this podcast drops, and we'll cover it next week. So, yeah,
just to kind of round out, that's what I've got today. There was a ton of stuff, all the different websites. We got Dan Barnes here and AJ coming up. But, yeah, I did my best to try to give you the highlights and stuff that relates to the XFL.
Very quick, very fast moving. It's still 37 minutes, but we're going to probably have another 2-hour episode. It's all good. It's all good. And the reason why we're going to have 2-hour episodes because we got to go to commercial break. Coming back, AJ and Dan are going to drop in and chat with us about their views on everything. Stay tuned for that. AJ Jakubec, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Of course, the play-by-play voice of the Ottawa Red Blacks. And you're on TSN 1200 up there. How you doing this morning?
Doing well. Yeah. Excited about, we'll see where this news goes in terms of CFL and a season. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of different things, future, present, all that kind of stuff. But in the end, I'm just fingers crossed and hoping that we get something in 2021 because I know, I missed it a lot in 2020 and I think a lot of other people in this country missed it as well. And we need some sort of football in 2021, whether it's a shortened season or whatever. And at least, I think there's optimism in a lot of circles that there's going to be some sort of season. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah, it seems like at least across the board that I've heard, I mean, people feel pretty positive about it. I want, us to be positive about it. It's still scary just because we don't know time-wise kind of, how everything's going to go, right? But do you feel overwhelming, from people that listen to you, that call into your shows and stuff? Are they feeling good so far about everything happening?
It depends. Like there's different levels. It depends on who you talk to, right? There's different levels of optimism and pessimism, no matter who you talk to. we've got a friend that's an ICU doctor in the area. I talked to a number of different doctors about, like, to me, I don't know why you'd listen to this. I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but to me, this has always been a health issue, right? And it's become a political issue, but the reality is this is a health issue, right? So if I want to talk about sports, about football, I talk to a football guy. If I want to talk about politics, I call a friend that works in politics. If I want to get information about health, I talk to doctors, right? And so I guess the one thing that encourages me and why I'm maybe a little more optimistic than pessimistic is when you talk to doctors right now, they think, like in Ontario right now, it's not good. But they think that if you look into the future, you kind of look 8 to 10 weeks ahead, that you look at where Israel is at and that, probably the US gets there before Canada and, UK gets there before Canada. But you look at where Israel is at right now and they're pretty close to normal life right now. So that's, I go by that more than anything else. It's tough to, you can get into, you can get down a rabbit hole, right? You can find a lot of different information that scares you and all that kind of stuff. But, just based on that, I'm optimistic more than pessimistic. How quick is it going to turn around once we get to that point? Are the authorities going to, are they going to say, hey, we want normal life as quick as possible? Or are they going to be cautious as they've been in Canada and in particular in Ontario? Once we get to that point, those questions I can't answer, but I think everyone wants to get back to normal life as quickly as possible. And so once a good part of the population is vaccinated, I think I'm hopeful that we start to work in that direction.
How does the league pull it off? Let's just try to be a little bit more pessimistic than optimistic. How does the league pull off a season if things don't get under control, if fans aren't in the stands? I'm talking from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because I don't think there's any doubt they need fans and stands, right? There needs to be some sort of indication by June that they're going to get fans and stands somewhere in Canada, right? Like, to me, if all of a sudden in June, Ontario is still hesitant, maybe cases are still high, hospitalizations are still high, the healthcare system is still, being stretched, then, I don't think they're going to be at that point in a position to say, okay, on Ottawa, Hamilton, Toronto, you guys can host games in August. I don't know if we'll be there yet, but if all of a sudden in, let's say, Alberta, they say it's full bore, all right, like they're hoping to have fans at games in Stanley Cup playoff games in Alberta at some point. And so, and as we know, or at least we should know, indoors is, in terms of transmission, the virus transmits far easier indoors than outdoors. So if all of a sudden Alberta has, if there's Edmonton Oilers playoff games with even 2,000 people there, that'll be my indication that, okay, you know what, outdoors is safer than indoors, and Alberta is headed in this direction. So there's two teams there. Saskatchewan would likely follow. So, I mean, could you have a bunch of games in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and maybe Manitoba to start? I think you could. And I think that's the indication that I've been given and talking to people close to the Red Blacks is that they expect to start the season on the road. And how long that's going to be? Is that going to be a couple of games? Is that going to be 4 games? I don't know. They've done this before when they had a soccer team where, they'd play games in April, but quite frankly, they'd start on the road and play 4 or 5 games on the road and come back and, play a lot of home games after that. So I think everyone's just looking at a lot of different options here. But I know in terms of the Red Blacks, and I get it, one of the issues I think in the CFL, and it's always been an issue, it's hard to get unanimity in a 9-team league. But I know Ottawa in particular is hell-bent on playing this year. And I think that's the majority of the teams for sure.
Yeah, it's just tough. And I went back and forth with Dave Campbell about this last night online. He's been on the show before too. Randy came out with his video yesterday, and one of the ideas they said is, the teams in the East playing in the West, like you said, on the road, right? If transmissions, whatever, are still bad, come August. But, and we've never covered the CFL, going into the season now, obviously, and really getting involved in all this. And Dave feels like Randy is being really transparent and really honest about it in a way maybe that we're not used to, right? Or maybe we're expecting too much. But when I watch that and I go, that's the only thing they mentioned in the video is, well, we could, if we could play on the road. I'm like, yeah, but what if you can't play on the road? Or what if, that's where I just start getting worried about it, right? Where if that's the one idea that's been put out, are there other ideas? I don't know. And that's what we're trying to, that was where my fear went yesterday, kind of watching that announcement video.
Yeah. I mean, look, if we're in the same spot, cases wise, hospitalization, again, that's the key, right? We're never mind cases at this stage. It's about hospitalizations, right? And if we're at that same point 6 weeks from now in terms of hospitalizations, then I'd probably feel you. I hope we're not. Again, in terms of the conversations I've had with doctors, they think, at least in Ottawa, that the next 2-3 weeks are going to be tough, but they seem to think that this thing's going to be turned around by then. So we'll see, right? We'll see. I mean, and hey, they admit that I don't think there's a lot of people that thought this third wave was going to be as harsh as it's been, right? This is our numbers are as bad as they've ever been in terms of, the hospital system being stretched. So could that still be the case in 2 months? Could there still be issues in terms of, supply when it comes to vaccines? I guess we'll wait and see. But, hopefully in 6 weeks, we're talking about a different story. And if we are, then I think, I'm not going to say it's smooth sailing, but I think you should be able to pull this off. In the end, like, the reality is, and I get it, it's tough because it's football, right? And, this goes probably deeper into, what we're going to talk about CFL-XFL, but, it's not apples to apples. I was frustrated last year because if you look around the world, like, I follow a lot of different sports, and if you look around the world, there is not a higher league in terms of revenue around the world that has not played a game. That's a fact, like, whether it's Aussie rules football or cricket or rugby league or rugby union or, the big five, so to speak, in soccer, hockey, football, baseball, basketball. I mean, the Canadian Football League's on an island here. Like, every soccer league in the world is playing. Every rugby league is playing. Every, hockey league outside of the Ontario Hockey League, for the most part, which canceled their season this year, has played. And so at some point, you'd think that, okay, I think they recognize this. You can miss one season. There's a lot of different cases where leagues have missed one season. I mean, Major League Baseball, they didn't finish 1994. Hockey, 2005, they didn't have a season, with a full season lockout. There's a lot of, the Spanish flu canceled the Stanley Cup. It canceled the last Grey Cup in 1919. That was the last Grey Cup that wasn't played until 2020. So, you can miss one. I'm not sure you can miss two, in my opinion, especially, it's not like hockey where the NHL came back and in 2005, everyone was just thrilled because it's the best league in the world. The CFL has to worry about the National Football League. They're already losing people, and especially young people that, I'm a guy that loves both. I just love football. But, there are people in this country that pick one or the other. And over the course of the last year, no one's saying I picked the CFL if they're on the fence because they haven't played. So I think they have to find a way to play. That being said, I understand that their issues are a lot tougher than, say, basketball, right? Like the CEBL, Canadian Elite Basketball League, they played their second season last year. They played 2.5 weeks. This year's schedule is going to be 14 games apiece, but they don't require fans in stands. And I think part of the reason is you got 10, 12 guys on each team, right? I mean, if you add coaches, trainers, everybody involved, you're still talking about, a group of less than 20. So that's far different than football. And I think that probably partially explains why football is struggled to really have any league have any success outside the NFL and the CFL, and why, some of these spring leagues have come and gone, and NFL Europe and so on and so forth, is just the cost involved, right? You're talking about, when we travel on the road with the Red Blacks, you're talking about a traveling party of 66, 44-man roster, medical, trainers, coaches, all that kind of stuff. So it's, it isn't apples to apples, but at the same time, they have to find a way to play. And I think they will. I really think they will. And I think we're just going to be looking at a different world in 2 to 3 months, just when you look at everything. Like, when you see fans at Angels games, for example, right? California was one of the most strict places in the United States. It's one thing to see it in Texas or Florida or whatever, but when you start to see that, when you start to see games being played in Europe, in places where they haven't had fans, like UK hasn't had fans, hopefully that changes soon. And hopefully just that mentality of, okay, you know what? Hey, there's fans everywhere you look on TV, baseball, soccer, whatever, there's fans. All of a sudden, I think that'll change a little bit of the mentality once we're at a certain point in Canada with vaccinations, where people say, okay, you know what? Time to turn the corner here. We should be a little bit further on where we want to be. And in the end, I think politicians, right? You talk about elections. There's an election here in Ontario in 2022. People are expecting an election here in Canada federally in 2021. I don't think you want to go into an election with people in Israel and the UK and the United States and Germany and everywhere around the world living normal lives, as we're sitting here not allowed to go to a sporting event or a concert or a restaurant or a bar. So at some point, when we reach that point when it's safe for everybody, then I think it's going to be go time here. And that's why I'm more optimistic than pessimistic.
Your president, Mark Goldie, he says that you guys are ready to go. Just, let me know, he said, let me know when we're ready to go for the season. So they certainly feel optimistic moving to the XFL. And I have a quote here in a minute too, but general thoughts on that and the XFL talks that have been going on the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me. I like the idea. For a lot of different reasons. I don't love everything about it, right? Like, there's certain things I'm not going to like about it. I know that. But I understand, like, to me, everyone's focused on the rules. To me, football is football. I don't care. Like, I could list you my 20 favorite games in football history, and I could list you 6 or 7 in college football, 6 or 7 in the NFL, and 6 or 7 in the CFL. So, like, to me, that has nothing to do with 3 downs, 4 downs. Like Auburn, Alabama, the kick 6, USC, Texas, Boise State, Oklahoma. I mean, Boston College, Miami back in the day. I can go on and on and on. Those were great football games. Like what started me, I started watching football in the early 1980s. And so I remember, the Chargers beating Miami in that epic overtime game in 1981. And then I remember the catch with Dwight Clark. And so, like, that wasn't good or bad or whatever because it was 3 down, 4 down. It's football. And so I get it. There are people that are a little more passionate about their brand of football. It has to be 4 down. It has to be 3 down. In the end, it's got to be a good product. And I think if it's a good product, then people will be on board. And, I'm positive that a guy like Wally Buono will be a big part in terms of the rules. And I don't think it's going to be NFL light if they do it. I think they want to be different. So what do they do? Do they have, CFL return rules? Do they have a CFL play clock so pacing is quicker? I mean, there's a lot of things, that you can do to kind of mesh the best of both worlds. For me, the bigger concern and what doesn't get enough play is the schedule, because how do you find a schedule that works for everyone? And the reality is you can't. You're compromising, right? In Canada, the Stanley Cup playoffs are a big deal. That takes place in, late April, May, and early June. So that, they're going to be playing games no matter when they start. At the very latest, I would think they'd start in April. I mean, Dave Naylor's talked about maybe March, but they're not going to be playing games in February. Everyone I've talked to is kind of April to September. Dave, I mean, is obviously as well connected as anybody, has talked about maybe late March, but so that's an issue right there. There's not a league really in the world that has a championship game and has their playoffs in the middle of summer, right? I mean,
NBA.
Well, but that's in June.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the NBA and the NHL are in June. Like I'm talking like July and August, right? And so like there's kind of there's football is typically played in fall, and then in this country playoffs in November, and in the United States, well, college football, you have championship games in December, you have bowl games in December into early January, playoffs into that mode, and then there's a climax, kind of like the football, the basketball, the hockey, and the European soccer model basically goes, okay, you play your games during the winter, and then spring to like early summer, like you're talking late June, you play a final. So how are playoff games going to be received in August, right? I guess is a question that I have. I don't love the fact that there's not going to be fall football. Labor Day is a big deal here. I understand. Okay, maybe you have championship game Labor Day. That's okay. But that's usually the time of year where people really get excited about football here, right? So you're talking about September and October, two really important months when it comes to the football calendar, where all of a sudden you might not be playing. So, but I get it, because if you're going that's why I love the idea. I love so many different things about it. I can tell you what I love about it. I'm just kind of being pessimistic here now for a change, but I think, again, just in terms of the schedule, in terms of fall, I think if you're going ahead with this, to me, you need a commitment and money that you're getting a television contract, and not the hope that you're going to get one. No, you need a commitment. If you're going to go with that type of schedule and completely revamp what you're doing, because, for example, in Canada, the television ratings are by far the best after Labor Day. So if you're revamping everything, you better be, because you got contract in hand. Hey, you know what? Fox and ESPN or whoever has come to us and they're saying, we're giving you this to play at this time of year, and it's a long-term commitment, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be. Then you say, okay, you know what? How do we argue with this? Because we're getting a television deal, right? But I understand how problematic, right? It's as problematic to play against the Stanley Cup playoffs in April, May, and June as it is to play against football in September and October in the States, right? Against college football. I mean, what nights are you going to play? High school football Friday, college football Saturday. The NFL is taking Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. So you're going to play Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and maybe Fridays or something like that. So I get it. There's no perfect solution in terms of schedule, but to me, there's been way too much focus on 3 downs, 4 downs, in my opinion, and not enough on schedule, which to me, I think is the biggest issue here when you're talking about the 2 prime months of football in this country being September and October.
Very, very good points. Yeah, it seems like everyone we've talked to, it always comes back to, we got to keep our 3 downs. It's like, well, logistics need to be figured out first. I think you nailed that completely. Your GM, the Red Blacks GM, Marcel Desjardins, warned against going down the rabbit hole of XFL speculation. Not a game worth playing. Does he mean like just what do you think he means?
I'll tell you exactly what he means there. We asked him that question on the radio, and I think the question was, what do you tell your staff? So like this wasn't about the fans. Like this was, what do you tell your staff? And basically, I think, his answer is a good one, right? How do you worry about that? We got to worry about the present. We got to worry about what we're doing in the here and now, right? So that's from a football perspective, football ops, coaches, that sort of thing, rather than, I think, him telling the fans that. So I think, his answer was a good one, right? He's not going to worry himself about what he has to do scouting wise if all of a sudden he needs a different type of athlete, a different type of player, right? Because that's one of the big things about the CFL. You're not necessarily getting, in some cases, look, football is football, but there are certain players, much like international hockey, much like international basketball, that are just kind of more geared for the CFL game. The 6 foot, 230 pound linebacker who's a tweener, right? Too small to be a middle linebacker in the NFL, but he's perfect size to be a middle linebacker in this league with, you know, the amount of ground you got to cover and that sort of thing. You know, like in the end, I think, you know, from a football ops standpoint, you still worry about what you're doing in the here and now. You're still taking the same type of players that you think are going to be quote unquote CFL players. You know, that smaller guy, that more athletic guy, that maybe wouldn't get a chance because of his size in the NFL. So, and if it changes, it changes, right? But I think that was kind of more the message that he wanted to get across.
Seems to make sense.
My last question for you today is, and this is first, you know, I kind of just want to know where you're coming at this. I mean, we're going to do our main bulk of our show here once we get done with these interviews, and we'll flesh our stuff out. Knowing that the CFL, XFL stuff is going on, that we're talking, whatever that means, I've had a lot of people ask me now in the last 2 days, hey, well, does that mean the merger's off? Does that mean whatever? What does it mean to you knowing that they're moving ahead with playing now and then continuing to, you know, have these talks or whatever else? I mean, how do you grapple with that? Because I think that we're going to have to figure that out for us and our fan base and stuff moving forward here, you know, in the next months now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's so hard to know. Like, I mean, there's so many questions, right? I mean, just in terms of, you know, because like it's all, you know, there's so much speculation about, okay, well, what's going to happen next year? What's going to happen 2023? And in the end, like, I think, you know, like it seems like the CFL is just going forward and worrying about the here and now, which is a good thing, right? It's not like they said, you know, like to have a Grey Cup in the middle of December. If you were starting right away in the spring, that could potentially be problematic, right? But hey, they're just looking at the here and now. So yeah, I'm curious to see where this goes. And you know, I just think there's so much good that can come out of it. And I understand the traditions and all that stuff. Look, I grew up in Edmonton in the early 80s. I remember distinctly the last 2 to 3 years of the Warren Moon dynasty. So like I've got a great passion for this league for 40 years of watching games. And you know, I appreciate, I've lived in 4 different provinces, BC, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Ontario. And I could walk to Quebec, you know, right on the border. I could literally drive to Quebec in 5 minutes and walk there in 30 from where I'm at. So I've been in a lot of different parts of the country, and, you know, I appreciate the history. I appreciate the tradition. I appreciate in particular the passion for this particular brand of football that people in, you know, all over the country, but in particular in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where, you know, a lot of the frustration has come from, I think on social media. I understand where that's coming from. I do think that there's too many good things to avoid here. Look, number one, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, they need a shot in the arm. And that's being nice about it. Like, you know, the last 7 games that I've broadcast in those markets over 2 seasons, 3 games in Montreal, 3 in Toronto, 2 in Montreal, 2 in Vancouver, 2018, 2019. I looked, the average attendance for those games, average announced attendance was 14,500 for 7 games. Highest was 17,000. And I can tell you, in terms of actual butts and seats, I don't know if it's over or under 10,000, but I know I'm not betting my life savings on either one. So you're talking about probably at best 10,000 people in seats, you know, for those games over 2 years in the 3 biggest markets. You just, you know, like you have to make calls to all markets. And I get the passion in Saskatchewan. I get the passion in Manitoba. I get the passion, you know, in different pockets across the country. I talk to people in Ottawa that don't like it as well. But I think, you know, the biggest thing for me is like, if Toronto says we're out, if Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment says they're out, and I have, you know, no one has any proof that they've said that, but you can connect the dots here that they're pushing this narrative. So if they say they're out and Montreal says we're going wherever Toronto is going, and there's a Montreal-Toronto connection in terms of ownership there, And Vancouver's got no ownership right now. It's in a trust because Dave Brayley passed away, who, by the way, wasn't too long ago. He owned 2 of those 3 franchises in Toronto and BC. Well, you kind of connect the dots and say, okay, well, they need to look at something different. They need to look at something bigger, I think. And I think the biggest things for me, obviously broadcast is a part of it. And that's why I say, like, you need some sort of contract in hand, multi-year deal, with money from one of those big US networks to say, you know what, here's $100 million a year for 5 years, so that you say, okay, well, at least we've got time to build this, right? Not like we need this in year 1 or else we're screwed, right? So you need some sort of long-term thing there. The gambling part is huge. Like Larry Tannenbaum, I don't think it's been brought up enough, as a lot of different contacts in that regard. And so, I think, and that's starting to change in North America all over the place in terms of single game betting and everything that's going on here. So I just think, with fantasy football, you can only do so much with an 8 or 9 team league. And again, is it going to be an 8 or 9 team league if Toronto says we're out, right? So, there's a lot you can do on that front, and video games, right? I mean, you look at kids, and how many kids start watching the NFL because they started playing Madden, right? Or they started, watching the NHL because they played, NHL 21. I think if you go to EA Sports, right? I think if you go with The Rock, if you go with, the CFL history, but also you have The Rock, you have something new, you have the American market, you have some money from Redbird Capital. I think you can go and make that work, right? Like, I just don't think, it's not like they haven't tried to make a video game in the past. I've talked to people about that, but it's not easy to get done. And so if all of a sudden you go with, these groups and you say, hey, we want to do this. And now you've got EA Sports CFL/XFL football with picture of The Rock and a Toronto Argonaut and a Houston Roughneck on the cover. Maybe all of a sudden that makes a kid say, hey, you know what? I'm going to play this game. Hey, it's a great game. I'm going to tune in, right? Netflix. I can't even tell you how many people, like I just did, a bunch of hockey interviews actually before I came on here, because I'm doing American Hockey League games right now during the pandemic. And I asked, someone what he likes doing outside of hockey, and said, well, I'm watching F1 all the time because I like the Netflix series. So like, if you can get something like that going, right? And I just think there's just more opportunities for that if you have both sides of the border. So yeah, I mean, look, there's problems. There's things that are problematic for sure. This is not going to please everybody. But in the end, like from my perspective, I'm 45 years old. I've been watching Canadian football and American football for 40 years. And the only thing that's important to me is that in 20 years, whether I'm calling games or not, if I'm in Ottawa, that I can go to a game. That's most important to me. And I think too many people have like I get there's certain hills you want to die on. Like for me, the Grey Cup is one. Like the Grey Cup, you're talking about a 100+ year history. You don't throw that in the cupboard and say, you're gone. I'd like to see some sort of Canadian content. I don't know what that number might be, but some sort of Canadian content for sure, where they're not getting thrown under the bus. And I want teams in all 9 cities. That's it. But too many people have too many hills that they're dying on in terms of this 3 down, 4 down, or has to be this, it has to be that. Look, like I said earlier about spring and fall football, I'd love to be calling games in September and October. Guess what? It's probably not happening. That's the way it is. In the end, rather be calling games in April and going to games in May than not seeing football at all professionally in Canada. So I think that's why this needs to be explored, and let's see where it goes.
Absolutely. Awesome. AJ Jakubec, thank you for joining us. Hopefully I got your name right again there on the pronunciation on the second one. We appreciate your time and talking with us and giving us some key insight.
Thank you.
Hey, can I get a year? Like I want like a full on year, like I see online.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Love it.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
You bet. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Dan Barnes, Post Media, joining us now to talk about all of this chatter between the XFL and CFL. Potential chatter nonetheless. Thanks for joining us, Dan.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
It always excites me when we have guests booked, and then I see all these wonderful articles being posted and shared about, the delay of the season. Not that that's good that they're delaying, but it does make me glad when I see all this, and I go, Dan, I'm really glad that we got you scheduled for this week. And you said it's good timing. So I'd rather be lucky than good. So I think we're on a good track here.
I think you have to be good to be lucky. Isn't that the old saw?
Yes. So first off, what thoughts? How are you doing today? I mean, this will air tomorrow, but we're on Thursday, April 22nd. We just announced the CFL delay to August 5th. How are you grappling with everything?
Well, I think it's having followed the league for 30 years and then covered it for on and off for 25. This has been a difficult time for the league and its fans, especially because the fans have been largely kept in the dark. The CFL wasn't doing a good job at telling them what's going on, in part because it kept changing and they were at the mercy of COVID. So they didn't want to appear weak, I think. So better than say something weak, they didn't say much at all, which was unfortunate. But this announcement, though it's bad news in terms of cutting 4 games off the schedule, it's good news in that they're actually going to play the game. They're fully committed, and if it's not 14 games, it'll be 12 or 10. I don't know how much lower than 10 they would be willing to go. Obviously, last year they were going to play 6 in a bubble in Winnipeg. I think that's I know the bubble's off the table at this point. So they're geared at 14. All kinds of things have to happen, though, right? The COVID landscape has to flatten, especially in Ontario, where they have so many teams and so many cases. That's definitely a problem. Alberta, where I live, also not good. BC's dealing with the variants, not good. So I think they kicked the can far enough down the road to give themselves a fighting chance at 14 games. The players, though they would have loved 18, they're on board with 14, and they're going to do whatever they can to make it happen, short of taking a massive salary haircut, because they feel they've done that already. And when you look at the renegotiated salaries this year, they have indeed done that. Guys who were playing 2 years ago for $1.25 are suddenly down to 95 or 100. And it's, convincing those guys to take another slice off the top, that'll be tough. Getting significant numbers of fans into all these stadiums will be tough. Like, what's significant? Is it 50%? By the end of the year, Wade Miller of the Blue Bombers said he wants 100%. I think that's seriously pie in the sky, but who knows? So a lot of good things have to happen, but simply getting the announcement out, letting the fans in on something was a good move. So if there's more to follow, great. That represents progress.
Is it a situation where CFL's looking at the vaccinations and looking at the case count in hospitals, but also looking to what the NHL is doing to allow fans back in as well?
Well, yeah, they've made no secret of the fact that they have incorporated return to play protocols, health and safety protocols from the leagues that are in business again. So they've done that. Obviously, the NHL plays indoors, CFL plays outdoors, and hope that plays to their advantage, right? But I don't know if it does. The BC Lions, who can play kind of indoor-outdoor in their BC Place Stadium, they're looking at only 5,000 fans to start, right? So you could make a joke about their attendance off the top, if you like, but they're looking at 5,000 to start, maybe 10,000 at some point. As I said, the Blue Bombers are looking at 30,000 plus at the end of their season. Good luck on that, but it'd be great. Obviously, it'd be great to see. Are they copying the NHL? Yeah, to a large degree they are. They've learned some lessons from them, but that only goes so far because the NHL is bankrolled by a serious TV deal, right? They can test their players way more often than the CFL could possibly afford. And that's just for starters.
Yeah, that's a big concern for me as well, and just knowing the tremendous amount of money and everything that's being spent, in the NFL and these other leagues in testing. We had early, we're gonna do the bulk of our show here once we get done with these. In your article, in the Toronto Sun, you had said that Randy Ambrosie had said he had not asked the XFL for any funding help with this, and he wanted a made in Canada solution for this, and that he hadn't asked XFL or Redbird or whatever. What is your take on that?
I believe that. I mean, can't call him a liar. If he says they haven't asked the XFL ownership for funding for the 2021 season, then that's probably the case. It doesn't mean that they're not talking about a financial arrangement down the road, right? If whatever comes of this chatter, this incessant chatter that they're having, and it's mostly around business. It's not about rules, I don't believe. Not at this point. I think they have to go way bigger picture in terms of what a business arrangement could do for both leagues, right? I think you have to have that off the top. If you don't get an understanding of where this is going and what kind of revenue it drives, why would you bother talking about the Rouge, right? I mean, that's crazy. So look big picture and drill down from there. So have they talked about money in the future? I believe they have. They must have. Either that or they're just wasting their time. But has the CFL asked the XFL for money to run their 2021 season? I don't believe they have. They have talked to the federal government. They have talked to their sponsors about coming up with, upfront payments. They have talked to TSN about what TSN can help them with. They've certainly, asked the players for accommodations on salaries and other things. So they are looking to maximize whatever revenue they can, but I don't believe that includes the XFL at this point.
Do you think that with asking for player cuts and going to the government, do you think they should have thought about asking? I mean, should that have been on the table to ask Redbird and the XFL to help subsidize that?
No, I don't think so, because what are they getting into? What is the XFL buying for? Call it $30 million, because $30 million is what the CFL was hoping to get in an interest-free loan from the federal government last year to run their bubble. So call it that. What does Redbird get for its $30 million? A piece of what? A piece of a league that's going to lose a lot of money this year, whether it plays or not, right? So that's a crazy investment. Those guys are way smarter than that. If the CFL could not possibly offer them anything of value for their money in 2021. It doesn't make sense to me. Why would you bother? So down the road, I mean, if you want to think of it as a good faith gesture, this is business, right? This isn't friends. It's not here. I'll give you $30 million and we can talk about it in 2 years. Nope, doesn't work that way.
I completely agree. There was a lot of chatter online when this whole thing started going, and a lot of CFL fans were just like, well, Redbird's just going to come in and give us money. I'm like, they're going to want something on their return on investment. That's the way it works. They're not fools. They're not just going to give you, a blank check and go, here, nothing in return. It's all yours. Just have it.
No, that's crazy. And when they start talking about what the two leagues for, the XFL is what it is. It's a bunch of assets right now. It's not even a league at this point. So what they have together is better. Right? They scale. So they scale up to pick a number. Is it 17 teams? If it's, if they go beyond that, if they suddenly have some power to spread the footprint around North America, then you talk about streaming deals. Then you talk about traditional broadcast deals. You talk about, gambling revenue. You talk about all kinds of things. But right now they can't talk about any of that because they have nothing to sell. So why would Redbird just essentially flush millions down the toilet by bailing out a league they're not even in business with yet?
They wouldn't.
I wanted to ask you, and I was talking with Farhan about this last night too, and part of your article was talking about player pay cuts, obviously a reduced schedule, 14-game season, and I know that the players are paid, per game. Any chance of any of that being figured out to make them whole at that point, for the games that they're not going to be playing? I mean, I know that it's you're asking the players to take the time off work now, potentially even later. I mean, what are your thoughts on that and kind of helping the players out?
Well, helping the players out. That's, again, this is business.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't, hey, let's get together on this, and it's going to be contentious. It has to be contentious because the CFL is trying to scrape every nickel at this point. According to many reports, the 9 teams lost as much as, 60 or 80 million Canadian, right? So they're going to lose some more money. They don't want to, they want to minimize that. So they will ask their stakeholder partners for as much as they can get. Now, the players, they've already given. They've given at the office, man. It's been a tough go for those guys, some of whom have not been paid since October or November of 2019, right? They got some federal government money that was passed through the teams, like any other employee in Canada was eligible to receive. But in terms of football money, no, it's not flowing. So, and the guys who restructured, we like to call it restructured contracts. Well, they renegotiated down, right? So why would they be willing to go another 20%? I don't believe that's even close to on the table at this point. It was floated. The players pushed back. I don't believe the PA leadership even took it to the membership because it was a pretty offensive offer for them. So they will have to come to some agreement on several issues that are contained in the collective bargaining agreement. That's certainly one of them. They did a lot of that hard work for the bubble because they basically came to an agreement over the bubble. So they had reached that, but whether that translates from 6 games to 14 games, mathematically, no idea.
You had a story that was reposted through 3 Down Nation that claimed at least 2 owners believe they can survive another year without playing.
Yeah, they believe they can. They believe that because this was the camp that is committed to playing, but not committed to playing at all costs, right? So they want to protect the value of their franchises. And if they take on too much debt through playing in empty stadiums, this is when, right, this is what you saw yesterday came out of those talks. The proviso for playing on August 5th is health and safety and a significant number of fans in the stands in every stadium. That is a nod to the owners who want to play, but not at any cost. And the cost of an empty stadium for these guys, some of them, is just too great. I don't know why that's a big shock to anybody.
It's not, and it's, there are groups like MLSE that, could afford, in theory could afford to play games in an empty stadium, but do they really want to lose money? Everything they own makes a lot of money. And this is the one thing that they own that doesn't make money. So when you think about some owners that need those fans in the crowd to actually pay the bills, and then there's an MLSE, it seems like there's way more than 2 teams that can't afford either from, being completely in the red or, having one of their products bleed out. There has to be fans in the stands.
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me is that the teams with really low attendance, so you look at the 3 major markets with low attendance, I believe they lost less money by not playing in 2020 than they did by playing in 2019. Because you throw in the player cost, the cost of a training camp, which is like $500,000 in some cases, cost of all the travel, right? So suddenly you've got all these costs that are not backstopped by large crowds. So you take all that off the table, you take the crowds off the table, but you take all those other expenses off the table, and they actually lost less, I believe. So you got that going on. That's a weird dynamic in the larger picture of the 9-team league, right? Because that's very specific to 3 places. So if that's the case, and I've been told that's the case, then you've got people with vastly different interior business models that might be at odds with the larger group. So there you go.
It seems like there's, the news came out, a lot of optimism, obviously, right? CFL, we just talked with AJ. He wants everyone wants the season, right? You strike me as maybe a little bit more of a realist, just down the line. Do you think there's too many loopholes in this? Like, well, we got to have significant numbers. We got to have this. We got are they hedging too much, or do you feel confident about this August 5th and what happens if we don't hit significant fans, or we can't go west to play games, or we can't do all these other things that they talk about?
Right. It's all business. So as a fan, everybody says, yeah, we got to have football. As a business owner that is thinking not only about this year, but next year and then a year after that, and, a legacy of football, not just this year, you have to be more realistic. The only way they can play is with fans. So if COVID suddenly goes through the roof in June and July, and they can't play on August 5th, they have contingencies for pushing the season back and reducing the number of games. I don't know specifically what those dates are and what those numbers are, but that's true, right? Ambrosi said yesterday they have backup plans for backup plans. Well, it only makes sense that they have contingencies for fewer games than 14. Now, I mean, if that doesn't happen and the choice is go broke by playing in empty stadiums or don't play, it'll come down to a vote of governors again, and it'll be close. And it certainly could go either way. But if enough teams don't want to play knowing that they're going to just drown in red ink with empty stadiums, how do you convince those guys to go ahead? Can't.
No way.
What do you want to see come from the CFL-XFL talks?
I don't have any skin in the game. I don't know that I want to see anything. The two leagues will, if they decide that they can expand their global footprint, if they can drive revenues that the CFL could not normally find, right? The CFL is almost maxed out, and people will criticize them for not doing enough marketing. Well, good luck. So if this dalliance with the XFL turns into global streaming and US TV deals that strengthen the business model of the CFL, and great. It's not that I want to see anything, but I believe the CFL is going to outlive me and my kids and their kids. It's the cockroach. The people have been trying to kill the CFL since I think I first covered in 1986, and then 87 when the Montreal Alouettes folded, 2 or 3 days before the season. Everybody was saying that's it. There's going to be, who's the next franchise to go? How can they possibly outlive this? That's a lot of years ago. And, they had their expansion into the U.S. that whatever. I mean, it didn't look good, but it set them up financially for a little while. Right, for a little bit of a run. If, whatever happens, call it a merger if you like. If they wind up with a merger that includes 8 XFL teams and suddenly that just goes south, I don't think the CFL just folds up its tent and we never hear from it again. I think it outlives us again. I think it comes back, right? I don't believe that the CFL can exist without Toronto. I mean, for sure, it can't exist without Toronto, because that drives the national buy, right? And if you don't have national ad buys, you don't have a league. If you don't have a national TV deal, you don't have a league. If you don't have Toronto, you don't have a CFL. I've seen people suggest otherwise. I think it's crazy. But I don't think the CFL lives and dies on whatever happens with the XFL.
I think that's interesting. Because we're the XFL Markcast, but we try to be objective. We try to be, where I've seen that where they say, well, yeah, let's say the XFL thing doesn't work out and then the CFL just continues, right? That it isn't necessarily the selling our soul. I have seen that floated. The question that I'm curious personally, and I asked AJ this too, or we asked AJ this, how do you approach this season with still these talks going on in the background, right? To me, it's like Game of Thrones, winter is coming, right? Like we don't know what this is, but yet we're still covering this league that's happening. How are you grappling with that as someone that covers this professionally?
Well, there's not a lot of news coming out about this XFL talks, first of all, right? You can't get it. Like I can't get an interview with Danny Garcia. I can't get an interview with Redbird Capital, and I've tried a couple of their people. You certainly can't get anything out of The Rock unless he's posting it on Instagram. And the news that you get from Randy Ambrosie and others on the XFL is pretty vague. So until there's meat on that bone, right, or somebody wants to tell you what's going on, it's going to exist, and we all know it's happening. We all know they're talking to one another. So it'll exist in the background. And now that they've put an August 5th start date on this, there's not a ton of work to be done on the CFL beat at this point, right? There'll be a couple of follow stories here and there about announcement, and there'll be some stuff about vaccination hopes and blah, blah, blah. And, what players feel about this and whether they're going to quit their day job, and they shouldn't, obviously, not yet. Don't be doing that. So in terms of distraction, there isn't any, right? I don't believe it's a distraction because there's nothing else going on at this point. August 5th is a long way away. And, if training camp starts, as they say, on July 9th or 10th, I've seen both. That'll be great. It'll be nice to cover some actual football. However we do it, whether we're allowed to attend practice or not, who knows at this point. But no, I think it's quite easy. You can in fact chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. And so we'll let them do that.
Sounds good. Dan Barnes, thank you for your time. We appreciate you jumping on here on the Markcast, and we'll be in touch soon. Hopefully we get some good news about this 2021 CFL season.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on.
And when you get that interview with Dwayne, you have this on the Zoom call. We'll do the same for you. I promise. We'll do the same.
Deal.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, insights, and expertise.
You bet. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Welcome back. Want to thank AJ Jakubec. I butchered his name. I feel bad. I said it twice great, and then I butchered it. It was a difficult name to pronounce.
Polish, strong Polish name with AJ.
And Barnes also joining us, and we want to thank them for their time. We hope to have them on. Again, as this thing evolves. Moving back on to other chatter. The NFL's named Caesars Entertainment, DraftKings, and FanDuel as its first sportsbook sponsors in a trio of deals announced today.
It was a couple days ago.
Okay. You may want to put that in there.
Sorry, I just copied the tweet. So
I know you're working 40 hours on this, but work 41 and just change. I'm kidding. I'm giving you a hard time. The package could generate just shy of $1 billion over 5 years. That seems about right.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the betting in the CFL and stuff. So I was telling Paul this in the break. There was two interesting. What? What
I'm already laughing at what Hodge said.
Oh,
sorry.
Well, here, so you can read them here, but just I found this interesting that two different CFL media. So this deal was announced with the NFL, tons of money, and then two different media people in Canada, depending on their predisposition for what they believe, had very different takes about this. So do you want to take this?
Yeah, John Hodge from 3 Down Nation, Homer Nation. If the CFL struck a deal even 1/10 this size, it would mean over 20 million Canadian dollars per year.
Woo!
You could keep this league's existing business model unchanged, which I'm not suggesting they should. I'm just illustrating a point, and it would still turn a profit every year. No. $20 million
Canadian. Woo!
$20 million. Why are you thinking like this when you should be thinking like this?
Yeah. So then big boy Dave Naylor comes in. He goes, or maybe both the CFL and XFL folks know that 4-game per week betting card has no value, and they need to partner and create a league big enough to offer legitimate betting options, which then they can expose to 400 million people instead of 38 million. Just maybe. And that was his tweet. Like that was his. I'm like, whoa, Naylor is throwing like hardcore shade. Yeah. I mean, I do like. God bless them, but 3 down sometimes it is. It's like this pinhole idea of like what we're trying to do. And it's like, we're bigger than that now. Like who gives a crap about 20 million?
I need to point out, Reed, that is the first time you've ever sworn on the XFL Markcast.
What did I say?
You dropped a swear word.
Did I?
You did. Congratulations.
What did I say?
You said the S word.
Did I really? Oh, well. Are we going to bleep
one.
that? Are we going
It's
to bleep
one.
that? I think we're deep enough in. I think we're deep enough in. Sorry.
Yeah, it's one S word. We'll let it go. I just wanted to point it out because, I've had my slip ups from here and there, and you've been pretty clean and pretty good. So it's the Zoe. We're going to blame the Zoe.
It's the Zoe. I do feel, I love this zero sugar one. Like I feel so loopy right now. It's like day drinking. Like I do feel like a little like, woohoo.
Is it too early to day drink?
No, it's 11:15. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
Do you want to? This is interesting. This was sent to me, Jake Henry, friend of the show. When we're talking about 20 million Canadian, getting these betting odds. What do you think about this from XFL Reddit? According to Mexico's league commissioner Alejandro, I can't say this.
Jaime Trujillo.
Yeah.
Thank you. He says that the LFA, the Mexico's version of the NFL, they're in talks with the XFL, and that was on Reddit. Right after the XFL decided to cancel its activity until 2022, we had talks with them. There are talks about how we can develop Mexican players. We already sent a few Mexican players to the CFL. We'd also like to send some to the United States to play in the XFL. The XFL LFA's director of idea of exporting players is a shared thought. There's without a doubt a good level of interest. I assume there's a good level of players or interest. I think it's lost in translation.
Yeah, it's lost in translation.
I probably have to read the real article to translate it correctly, but they say we are Mexican football. After all, a powerhouse in the international scene, but we also acknowledge that our player development structure is quite different from that of the United States. Despite that, Jaime said the XFL wants to integrate Mexican players into its roster, just like the CFL.
And look, they said talks took place with the previous XFL. I would assume that means Vince, but they're going to have meetings with the new owners as well. And what do you think about this? I mean,
okay. This is going to come off arrogant American, but the CFL has something to offer the XFL. In terms of heritage, in terms of lineage, in terms of organizations that are already in place. I don't know too much about the Mexican Football League, but what I can tell you that the Mexican Football League can offer is Mexico City. And the NFL already goes and plays games down there. And there's a limited amount of stuff, and I am of Latino heritage. There's a limited amount of stuff that the Mexican League can offer the XFL. You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Like, in terms of players, sure. In terms of media market, sure. But that's about it. That's about it.
You think the CFL has a stronger, even though their business structure isn't good enough for the players that they have in the league, that they have a better business structure in league than the LFA?
Yeah, I'm actually making the argument for, the CFL going to a bank and going, hey, we got a 108-year-old league. Just give us a loan. Yeah. I'm actually making that argument right now. I think the CFL has a more, I don't know how long. Forgive me, I'm not well versed on the Mexican Professional Football League, but I think the CFL has more of a name recognition, more of a viewership. I think the same problems that people are saying the CFL has with 4 downs, saying, "Oh, we'll just watch the NFL." I think Mexican fans are just watching the NFL. They're watching the Cowboys. They're watching, they're watching the Raiders. They're watching, the teams they gravitate toward. And I think that, I don't know.
I figured this would be a good breaking point, and then I have some other XFL and the scattered stuff after this. So I figured
let's do that. Come back and we'll talk about that stuff. Welcome back. Just a few little tidbits here and there. I think I'm going to go off about something real. I think if this is what I think it is right here, I think I'm going to go off a little bit on that. Let's talk about this Luck lawsuit first. Oliver Luck lawsuit's currently scheduled for a jury trial on October 8th. Who's drinking the Zoa now? Yep. Much of the trial would focus on contractual teams and accompanied context that the two sides...
Contractual terms.
Actual terms. I'm sorry. I'm going right through this way too fast.
Okay.
At any point, the two sides could resolve their differences and settle out of the court. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's here we go. October 8th. So set your calendars, get your, I want some True TV on this. I want some True TV. I want a camera in the courtroom for this. What would you pay to be able to watch this trial?
Well, maybe $5.
I would pay. I'd get it on the network.
$9.99.
Yeah, can we get it on the network? Anyway, but yeah, so there you go. Mark your calendars. We got the Oliver Luck is going, and they could settle at any time if they wanted, but it's scheduled for the 8th.
Right. Oh boy, did that blow up quickly? We're talking about this because Redbird's involved with the Fenway Sports Group, who owns a part of Liverpool, and that seems to be what drove it. Is the American greed aspect of things, but we're talking about the European Soccer League, Super League.
The Super Mega League.
Super Mega League blowing up, basically. And it was because the Premier League teams, and then, of course, I think it was Premier League teams, and then I believe it was it Madrid or Barcelona? Or was it AC? Another league's team was like, we're done, we're out of this. And they blew it up. And I think it's a great thing for soccer. I think the Americanization, when people say American players need to go overseas to learn how Europeans play soccer, it's because of a wide variety of things to learn the game better, to be better soccer players. What this was doing was taking the European structure and making it an Americanized structure. And I think that is bad for the game. Yeah. You need the relegation. You need the reason to really push through and finish at the top of your league. So you can get not only, stay in your top flight league, you can get into champions, different leagues. And there are already these super leagues in effect in a way. I mean, every once in a while you get a random team, but ultimately on the scope of things, it's just, this was dumb. This was a stupid, greedy idea. And they're talking about how they're going to do some profit sharing. Nonsense. That wouldn't last long at all.
Well, now, but so if you're going to play devil's advocate, because I saw a lot of people say well, this is why the XFL and CFL should stay separate.
And that's apples and oranges.
Well, but I'm just saying.
Okay, so here's the comparison. What if you are what if you're a kid and you go to school at let's just throw out Arizona, go play at Arizona, and then all of a sudden USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Stanford go, you know what? We don't want this Pac-12 thing. We're going to go join up with Texas, and we're going to go join up with Oklahoma, and we're going to go join up with Florida, and we're going to go join up with these blue blood football schools, and we're gonna have a league, and then every year we'll pull 4 of you out of your conferences and bring you into our thing, but you guys stay over there. That's what's going on. It's not like it's not a fair comparison, because I pointed this out on Twitter too. It's not like the Packers and the Cowboys and the Steelers all are getting together and going, well, we're making the XFL. That's not what's happening. It's not the same thing. It is really not the same thing. You're talking about leagues that are already good financially.
Yeah.
The Premier League is good.
That's the difference.
League is good. League is good. Serie A is good. The Spanish league. Oh, I said Liga. You know what I'm saying? Like, all these leagues are financially viable outside of this.
Yeah.
The comparison fails because XFL and CFL are currently not financially viable without one or the other, I feel. And that's why it's different. So this is a stupid comparison to say the ESL is the same thing as the XFL and CFL merge. It's not.
Well, I'd just like to know what this is what my Twitter looks like some days. So I just wanted to make sure we talked about it. I think it would have been a bigger story if it hadn't fallen apart in the last week here. So.
I was pissed.
Yeah,
I was pissed. I'm like, I believe the last Premier League team to pull out of this was Tottenham, which is my club that I support. And it's like, I know why you were the last team to pull out, because you need this to play top flight ball. Tottenham's currently in potentially not even going to Europa this year because of how bad they play. So they need this kind of top flight international competition for money and all that stuff. So I understand why they were the last team to not pull out of this. And that's, and they say it's because of the pandemic, but let's be honest, the teams they named that are going into the Super League, they have owners that are plenty wealthy and it could survive 3 pandemics. Don't give me this stuff that's going to help them for the pandemic aspect.
A couple other notes. This is a somber note. This really hit the XFL community this week. Chris Brown, former Defenders guard, passed away. Causes aren't known yet. I know that XFL Reddit was reaching out. I helped put them in touch with Cole Boozer, friend of the show that's been on. They wanted to get in touch with the family and friends and maybe help mitigate some of those funeral arrangements. And I know that they were looking to put together a GoFundMe for that. So I know that touched a lot of people. If you are someone that feels compelled, I didn't hear back from XFL Reddit about the final, putting the GoFundMe yet, but reach out to them on Twitter. Just like Braden with CFL Reddit, there's an XFL Reddit account, and the guys that run that are great too. So just really sad. I know Mark Perry was really affected by that. And I know a lot of the guys that cover the league, we obviously weren't lucky enough to cover the XFL last year and go to the games and, see the players like that. And so I know that really affected a lot of those people. So,
thoughts and prayers to his family. And let's see if we could get some kind of information on that GoFundMe. Let's figure that out too. Heather Brooks Karatz, hopefully I'm pronouncing that last part right, former Wildcats president, has joined UTA as the executive vice president of growth and operation. I don't know exactly what that entails in terms of is it a sports division or is it overall growth?
You're asking the wrong guy. I know. I just wanted to make sure we talked about it. It came out in the show. You can look at it. It came out in the show last week. I was freaking with the Rod Peterson news, and that came out about Heather. But I thought that was the big news that we missed, and then everything else. But this is just a couple of presidents now. Ryan Gustafson, president of the XFL Dragons, has told me he's out of not doing sports anymore. Brian Michael Cooper with the Roughnecks. He is no longer. He went back to his law office, and then Heather now is moving on. So we just. Again, people move on. All these preconceived, the Roughnecks are going to be around for a million years. All these things, like, people move on. And yes.
I just looked it up. She's joining UTA to grow the influencer and singer. And so it's not just sports related. It's overall business. So congratulations, Heather.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Congratulations. But yeah, no, good for that. But like I said, people are moving on, man. I tell people that all the time on Twitter, like the things that we hold dear, and Brandon Silver is the quarterback of the Dragons. Like, we're talking big picture stuff here, and it kills me. And I had a tweet today, and they were like, "What do you think about playing in the Red Bull Arena next year for the Guardians?" I'm like, bro, like, first off, I say normalize not asking me these questions at 6:50 in the morning. That would be number one. But second off, like we gotta go big picture here. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of we're talking like global landscape. I don't want to hear about like the Red Bull Arena and the number of seats in it will be a good fit for the. You get what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think
at this point, like, we got bigger plans here going on.
Well, I don't think the attendance is the issue. The issue is getting the virus under control. The issue is figuring out this merger thing. And I think that, like, environment goes into that. Like, they could, like, for example, the DC Defenders could have played at FedEx Field. I don't know if it's still called FedEx Field where the Washington football team plays, but they chose Audi Field because the environment. And I think that's why I was throwing it out there. I'm like, MetLife is kind of too big for an XFL team right now, and I know what you're saying, but
we're like 2 years away. Like, I don't give I'm not gonna swear again. Like guys and girls, like, we gotta grow if we're making fun of Dunk or Hodge for the 20 million, like, the same goes for us. Like, I don't want to hear about like getting a better stadium right now, 2.5 years out from what. Like, I don't care. That, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, we got to go big picture here. I'm tired of this. Like, well, Brian Michael Cooper was the president 2 years ago, and that means he's coming back. Like, no, he's not. Heather is moving on. Ryan's moving on. We're here, but
moving on. No, we have not moved on.
But we're expanding our focus. I think if we were still talking about, young Rock at this point, we would have questions about our sanity, right? I mean, I think we got to grow. I think we all got to grow here.
Yeah.
Anyway. Sorry. A couple of last things. Eric Dungy, moving on from the XFL, he was a former he was a Renegades backup with Landry. He's joining the Blues in Houston for the TSL. We're very excited about that. Big time news coming out. Mike Mitchell had teased this before to us in the group. We already knew that Kevin Gilbride is going to be hosting the Jousters, the winningest team ever in the TSL. Luis Perez is going to be apparently the QB there, and that is so. I'm telling you. And I got one more thing to say about TSL. I'll let Paul comment on this, but that's exciting. Kevin Gilbride, Luis Perez. That's a Guardians reunion in TSL.
Yep, and they named all the head coaches for all of the TSL teams. The Aviators, Terry Shea. The Generals, Bart Andrus. The Blues, Ted Cottrell. Conqueror is going to be Jerry Glanville.
Jerry Glanville coming back
For his 70th year of coaching. The lineman is Hal Mumme.
Hal Mumme. That's a big one. He was the offensive coordinator for the Renegades. That's exciting.
Okay. Alphas is Peter Voss. The Sea Lions is Larry Kirksey. And the Jousters, of course, you mentioned Kevin Gilbride.
Yeah, some good names in there. You know, I know Terry Shea, Bart Andrus. They said that Kevin Gilbride, Mike Singletary. They said that Mike Singletary was going to come back and do one of the teams. He was with the XFL, and I didn't see him on there. That fell through. But Hal Mummy's exciting. A lot of old guys. Gilbride's old school. Mummy, old school. Glanville, old school. So, that's exciting. I think the TSL is going to be good. My other note, we went back and forth with a couple of people on Twitter about Spring League, and then I did on Facebook as well. Say what you want about Brian Woods and the business model and paying players and all that. I will not stand for people criticizing players trying to get more tape and better their game. And I saw a lot of heat coming out this week about Spring League on the Facebook groups, and I will not stand for that. These players work too hard in trying to get their name out there, and I don't care that it's not XFL or and this. I'm like, okay, let's not be an XFL mark here. Like, okay, I mean, like, let's not hate on the Spring League because it's not the XFL. Like, we're all good here. We're all good. Same with the CFL, but I won't stand for that and people criticizing. You can say what you want about Brian and not paying and all that kind of stuff, but I won't stand for that.
Well, I mean, is it XFL people that are doing it, or is it a certain group of people that ran a bubble of an indoor football league down in Atlanta that are doing it?
No, it's like XFL fans.
Okay, because I had to block that one troll who thought that he could do a better job being your sidekick than I could, apparently.
Yeah. But no, I won't say, guys, like we gotta be players first here. And if they want to go in the Spring League for 6 weeks and play and not pay, like not all the guys have to pay. If they want to go and like, it doesn't affect you. If they want to go. And also the criticism was like, well, it's not even good football. It's great football. It's as good or better than fan control football by a long shot. So I don't want to hear that. The players work too hard. It's get out of here. I won't stand for that.
Taking shots at the FCF. I love it. Speaking of those guys, Journey is in talks with the Bears, the Packers, and the Panthers. Join their eighth quarterback. Potentially coming on their roster. He recently attended his pro day in Minnesota, and they sent 50 representatives from 31 different teams. That's pretty good when you get one team didn't send I'd love to know who that team was. Kansas City, probably, because they're locked down with this guy that cost them $500 million.
They got who is it? Mahomes and then Kurt. What's their backup? He retired right after he did the big shoulder hit when Mahomes went down with the turf toe. Kurt Henny, is that right?
Yeah, Kurt Henny.
Right, that's a deep pull. I was really drunk that day when Mahomes went down against the Browns and
Chad Henne, right?
Chad Henne, that is it. Journey tweeted too that some scout had done a write up on him. I go, I'm watching if Journey gets drafted, I'm going through a wall. Like XFL Jim is going to need to give me a wall that I'm going through if Journey gets, because God bless, then that would be one good thing to come out of Atlanta and the FCF bubble. So.
Love it.
That's it.
Love the spiciness toward the FCF.
I'm done.
Love it. You're done. I'm rubbing off on you and I love it. Yeah. And you're acknowledging it. It's all good.
Yeah.
So anyway, look, we don't mind you interact with us on Twitter. Just don't be trolls. And let's have positive discussions. Let's have discussions. We're into solutions. Right now, there are problems, and we can't just look the other way and say there are no problems because there are problems. And we want to solve these problems. We want to see the CFL succeed. We want the XFL to succeed. If they do it together, even better. If they don't, whatever. That's the way we look at it. So let's chill out, everybody.
That's it. That's all I've got. Google Doc's empty.
Thank you for joining us again. XFLshow.com/review. Leave us a review. XFLshow.com/merch to buy some merch. Support the show. Again, we want to thank you all for getting us over the 1,000 follower mark, and we're going to aim for another giveaway when we hit 2,500. So hopefully you'll share this podcast around. We'll get to 2,500, and we'll do another great giveaway.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get like a PJ Walker sign something, or like a.
We definitely can't get Sharman Jones to sign it. He's just not. He's not going to have it.
Yeah, BJ Daniels. I don't know. We could get something cool. Send us ideas. Send us ideas if you want for a good giveaway for the 2,500.
Definitely. Awesome. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening, and see you next week.
And thanks to our guests, Dan Barnes and AJ Jakubec.
Thanks to our guests, Dan Barnes and AJ I'm going to try to stop right now. I'm just going to stop right now. Thanks to our guests. Thanks to everybody listening. We'll see you next week.